And then you have the Department of Citizen Strategy. And fucking fuck. Department of Citizen Strategy. Department
Calling you
of
right now.
Citizen Strategy. Department of Citizen Strategy. Department of Citizen Strategy.
Joe
Department.
would
Fucking
be Joe.
Lexi. That was Lexi.
It's truly frightening.
This isn't a
Gives
plan.
you a home.
Oh man, I got this. Take one for me too, man.
What's up, Harbor Fiends? It's your boy, Ricky Van. I am back with my two brothers. We are the three quarters of horror. I'm gonna introduce to you first the man, the myth, the legend, JR the villain. What up, son?
Oh man, the movie about moral dilemmas. I mean, what would we do if we're stuck in the house with that dilemma? I don't know, is it humane, or after watching this, did I want to fucking enlist?
Yeah, we are run for euthanasia. What up, Joe the psychologist? How are you, brother?
I am good.
Cheers,
it's funny
by the way.
that
Cheers.
it's funny he mentions that because I'm watching it and I'm like, if the Lopez brothers had to make, well, the Lopez siblings, their sisters in here, had to make the decision, how would it go? So I'll tell you at the end. But I'm curious to talk about this one. Obviously, hello, it's a Cronenberg child. So does she live up to daddy and the brother? We'll find out.
Oh, Canada.
And it's Canadian.
The movie we will be discussing is the 2024 film Humane, directed by Caitlin Cronenberg, written by Michael Sparaga. The film stars Jay Baruchel as Jared York, Emily Hampshire as Rachel York, and Peter Gallagher as Charles York. In the wake of an environmental collapse that is forcing humanity to shed 20% of its population, a family dinner erupts into chaos when a father plans to enlist. Alright, we have another JR recommendation. Now, when I say recommendation, I don't know if JR saw it and then he recommended it, or he saw it, looked interesting, then recommended it, but then watched it a little bit later on. So we're gonna get all up into that like a dog in heat. So what up, my brothers? You ready for this one?
Oh yeah.
An environmental collapse, let me tell you, man, that's just gonna happen one day. I ain't no conspiracy guy, but brother, it's gonna happen eventually, right? What do you think, guys?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah,
I'm gonna tell you right now, that shit happens, I'm enlisting because I don't want to be part of that fucking madness because everyone is gonna turn into this family. I don't want to live to see all that, so I'm with Charles on this one. So let's talk about it. Let's talk about the program of Enlist and the docs, DOCS. Incredible decision that they make it kind of easy to make in this film, but I couldn't imagine it's easy to make at all. So Joe, the psychologist, talk to us about this Enlist program and talk to us about docs. It sounds like a G.I. Joe villain, doesn't it? Docs. And what does it stand for, my brother?
Writers for books and movies, stop giving the government any fucking ideas. Seriously. We already had the purge. And yeah, half this country would probably go for that one. And now you want to introduce us to this one. So Enlist, basically, our resources are running scarce. And in order for the resources to maintain, people have to decide and basically enlist to be euthanized. And then they create the Department of Citizen Strategy. The Enlist program, watching it, like, it kind of makes a little sense. But these people are given a financial incentive in order for them to enlist to help the family out. So the government's kind of paying for you to, off yourself to help your family. All right, at least the family's going to make some money in it because they're going to need money to try to figure out where the fuck they're going to get this food. When Bob shows up, which I have seen this guy in comedies before, so he still delivers some comedic in this, but when they say he's basically was a former correctional officer and pretty much all the prisoners. So yeah, if you're in jail, you're fucked. So everybody who was in jail was basically put on the enlist. So the correctional officers didn't have a job, and then they took this job on. And as with almost everything, there's this corruption with them, having to go and collect the bodies, and they do it. They make it like, oh, it's going to be okay. We're going to hold your hand through this, and then they're like, so we came for 2 bodies and we got one. So I'll let JR finish on that one.
What about Bob? All right, so to go back to Ricky's point real quick. So when I saw this film, I was like, we have to talk about this because of we do like films that have moral dilemmas that make you, when you're watching, you think, what would you do in that position? This one I thought had a unique because of the fact that they're telling you, all right, you're doing your country a favor. You're doing the world a favor by offering yourself. You are a hero. And the fact that when you offer yourself, we'll make sure you get a commercial telling people what you actually did, which kind of reminded me a little bit of Starship Troopers when I started watching.
Yes.
Those commercials, because that shit was hysterical. And to top it off, what I like about this film is not only was the climate change, there was certain things that was happening because they all had tinted windows. They were all afraid to stand in the sun, which I thought, even though they didn't explain why.
That's a good point. They never explained the environmental part of it, and I like the clues of the sun. It's telling you a visual story there. That's pretty cool.
Because even when the dad started peeling the tint from the window, and he reacted real quick with the sun. But it's the whole thing into it, and then don't forget that enlisted program was every country around the world they had a quota of 20% of their population that had to enlist. So there was a quota,
and not us.
And then to top it off, there was this whole kind of, unfortunately, it kind of hit on some of the things today because you had all these illegal immigrants who were enlisting. That way their kids could get pathway assistance and shit right away, and they get money. So there was a lot.
How much money was it, Joe? Because that was the big
$500,000.
That was the big
family
payday in it. If you would euthanize yourself.
See, I didn't
enlist. Your family gets a big
I think
check.
It was $500,000 per.
You're pretty much set.
Yeah.
I missed that part.
That's why in the beginning, like when the very first opening shot of the film, when they show the body getting taken out of that house, the doc's officer hands over the check to the grieving woman who all of a sudden ain't grieving no more when she got that money.
Wayne's at her, she's like,
right.
Yeah, but it was. I liked that all these moral dilemmas going on at the same time, and then to top it off, you had the one, I forgot Jay's character.
Jared.
He was like the government stooge who preached everything that the government wanted to say, but didn't really know what was going on at the same time. So you had all these characters put into this predicament, and the fact that Bob, who was such a great character, he had personal motives. And, I know we're going to talk a little bit more about them, but the fact that, Bob was kind of a victim of the enlistment with his wife who was dying from Parkinson's. So she enlisted, and, so there was a lot of stuff that were going around in the back, which I like that. And this was an interesting film because to the enlistment, and then the fact that Doc still had to meet a quota. And then the part where they shot the girlfriend, like, oh, you got your second wife. What are you talking about? I need 2 Yorks. Get your ass back in the house. But there was a lot with this moral dilemma that I liked, and I think that it made the film more interesting because as you're watching it, you're wondering, what would you do in that situation?
Yeah, it's a crazy situation. Yeah, because what happened was Charles and his wife, which is his second wife, who was a celebrity chef, Dawn, I think that was her name, and she gets cold feet. So they already had enlisted for 2 bodies, so they needed another York. So yeah, man, when they gave them this whole ultimatum, well, nah, y'all ain't going nowhere. And Mia, which is Rachel's younger daughter, she's like, no, she's underage, so she's exempt from the program. But y'all motherfuckers got to decide who's gonna die today. So they give him like a little bit of time, but
2 hours.
2 hours.
2 hours. 2 hours, and flash your porch light so we know to come in because we have a body. I'm like, God, that's so fucking horrible.
I did like what JR said though when he pointed out this environmental crisis. They never dived into that.
They didn't have to.
They didn't have to. You're right. I loved it. They kept it subtle. They kept it where it's mostly visual cues, and you got to be picking up on little things like the tinted windows, the umbrellas, which are not little things, but they never drew attention to him. You just saw the characters performing these everyday mundane tasks like it's nothing. No one questions it. So you're like, oh man, they must have been living like this for a long time at this point. And you mentioned with Grace, the Noah, his girlfriend, yeah, she gets shot and killed. And Bob was like, I didn't meant take her down. Like, yeah, he just made like a capacitator. I think Bob was probably the best character.
Bob
in this
was-
movie.
Oh yeah, he definitely was.
I loved all that. Yeah, let's talk about this. So the fallout between the Docks, the Yorks family. Let's talk about this whole dynamic, because I think this was the most interesting aspect in this film, is getting to this. Like I mentioned, this choice, this dilemma that's placed upon these siblings. And mind you, there's 4 of them. One of them is adopted, and he's like, as Noah, who is a recovering addict, who's also supposed to have been this piano virtuoso.
Prodigy, yeah.
Yeah, so let's talk about it. Jay, I'm gonna start with you. So let's talk about this fallout with, the Charles going through, being euthanized, and then the decision that gets placed upon his children. Let's go.
Well, don't forget one thing too with Noah. Noah was also a minority in a rich family.
He was.
Yeah, so the catch was the fact that Dawn bailed, left Charles, and then Charles didn't want to. Basically, he wanted to cancel the procedure, but good old Bob.
Gotta read that fine print.
You can't do it, because if you do it, you lose all the money. You go to jail for the rest of your life, and guess what? Your kids don't get anything. So Bob put Charles into a corner, and Charles, this scene was funny because here you are, Bob, just, going through the whole procedure with him, put in euthanizing him. And then afterwards, he's like, you know what, the piano playing, that I gotta tell you, that's right up there. That's one of the best procedures I've been to. And they're like, would you leave? And he goes, oh, well, I can't leave because, I was promised 2 Yorks. Bob's big thing is not the fact that he is promised to Yorks. It's the fact that he hates the type of people that the Yorks are. So his hidden agenda is he's tired of these basically privileged people, these people that shouldn't be in society. And he wants all these privileged people to be gone because they're what makes society worse. So I like the whole backstory with that, and the fact that here you are with siblings. And poor Noah. This guy's a recovering addict. He's basically with a cane, because he's recovering from an accident where she actually killed somebody.
Yeah, good. Thank you for bringing that up. That's an important character piece.
Yeah. And then you later find out that Dad settled out of court, and here you go. Noah has like $3 million in his pocket, and he's not telling anybody. Now it's funny because the other sister, I'll be honest, the whole time I saw her, I thought that was Love from You. And she reminded me of Nellie from Haunting of Hill House.
Nellie, yes. No,
it wasn't her. I'm like, oh my God, it wasn't her. But it
Ashley,
looked like
you're talking
her.
about, right?
Yes, it looked like her.
You're right.
The fact that
you're right.
you had I'll let Joe talk about Jay because that's Joe wants to talk about Jay. But then you had the other sister that was on Schitt's Creek, and I loved her character on Schitt's Creek. To see her in this role, I'm like, holy shit! Mm-hmm. But the fact that here they are locked in the house. Bob tells you have 2 hours to basically when you guys got to kill. You got to give me a body. I'm going to go chill in the van with the little girl, which the whole interaction with the little girl in the van was fucking amazing. I love it. Where Bob's just trying to play cards. I will play cards with you, but, you have your mother's attitude. And your mother's not a good person.
Good child actress, too.
Oh, yeah.
Very good
yeah.
child actress. Because I think their scenes were probably the best in the film when them 2 are together. Because here he is. He's trying to basically give a moral high ground to what they're doing. But in reality, it's because he hates the fucking family. Mm-hmm. He wants 2 Yorks to be gone forever. But he's trying to be nice for her the whole time. Come on, she spilled this popcorn. But yeah, I thought that was interesting that they had to basically try to off themselves in the whole 3-on-1 scenario that kind of painted itself. So I'll let Joe finish on the rest on that one.
Joe, the psychologist.
Emily Hampshire, who was in Schitt's Creek, she actually, where I first saw her, was in Sci-Fi's 12 Monkeys series, where she played Brad Pitt's role in the movie and elevated the role of Brad Pitt's character in the series. She showed so much range. So seeing all this in there, and I sat there, I'm like, I feel like JR is more like Jared, and I'm like Rachel. but somehow it just turned out that Jared's the older one. But yeah, I thought it was messed up that they all quickly turned on Noah. He's like, it's been me and you against these two assholes. And now is when you're going to join them? Like, and all because you found an email that dad paid off, which I'm pretty sure dad had paid off many other people in those kids' lives.
How many of those kids got payoffs of some sort?
Thank you. And then as far as, Bob and the group, again, it kind of, Bob, because his wife had died. So if he had money, he probably would have gotten to the treatment, so he's sitting there watching this family who has all this money. If he would have had the money, he could have gotten his wife the treatment she needed. So he's kind of a little bit of a bitter pill. When Mia cut up all his cards, he's like, oh, why'd you do that? I mean, and then when he's stapling back together, I would have gotten tape. But, if I didn't have tape, I probably would have stapled them back together. But I love that. He's like, it's not going to work. Like, he's all pissed off about the cards right now. Like, I had thought that the younger sister was still alive kind of at this point. So when they decide they're all going to work together and turn it against Bob and the docs, I kind of missed where she had died.
She was alive at that point, but she died somewhere and during the aftermath of everything. JR had mentioned Bob's not dilemma, but his modus operandi, his ulterior motive against the York family. And they're all pretty fucked up because we had mentioned Jared, who is like this hated, almost celebrity type figure who's an anthropologist. And it's a very, very controversial figure. And speaking of controversy, Rachel, the other sister, is a very controversial, pharmaceutical CEO. Everybody hates her. She was probably the most unlikable character, honestly. I prefer Jared over her. and Ashley was a struggling actress. So again, trying to dip into the spotlight. And of course, the only one that you mentioned, the non-blood relative, Noah, who, again, he had musical talents, but was hammered with bad drug addiction, and he got into that bad accident, manslaughter, killed somebody in the process, and he's all fucked up. JR mentioned walks with a cane, he can't even get around. I like how JR was pissed off that there was no alcohol at the party because Noah was coming. He's like, what the fuck you invite this guy for? We can't even.
I know.
I would have been like, I'm out of here, bro. There's no alcohol. I'm not gonna stay.
At least the dad, Charles, poured himself his one glass of wine. Because I was sitting there, he filled that glass up.
I caught that.
Stuffing it out, and
he was spilling it. Then he's like,
and that's when I figured out with the whole Enlist thing what he was doing. But I didn't. With Noah being an addict, it tied into that.
And I love how Bob, and after all this shit, he still survived. They spared him. All right, guys, let's wrap this one up. Closing thoughts time. JR, help us wrap this motherfucker up, man. Give us your closing thoughts. Anything else you want to say? Rate this joint.
Well, I didn't read anything about this film, and I just happened to see it on Shudder. I was like, this looks. The name caught my attention. I was like, let me watch it. So I kind of like when you go into a film that you've never heard of before and nobody was talking about. No expectations whatsoever.
Those are the best, yeah.
And I came out of it. I overly enjoyed this movie. I thought this movie had a different dynamic, had a different moral dilemma to present itself. It had characters that they each had a massive flaw. So you didn't really root for which one you wanted to get killed. I mean, remember, Jared in the beginning is spewing all this propaganda to the point where he even mentions possibly having children, even his son eventually enlist.
Oh my God. That's not what I meant.
He's trying to say, they're twisting my words. No, he said that stuff.
He said that.
So then you had the father, Charles, who was basically the face of news for a long time, but
respected.
Didn't believe the government BS that his own son, because remember that scene where they bring in the piano in and Jared's talking and dude goes, fuck that guy.
Yeah, I love that.
Sorry, boss. He goes, no, it's okay. No, I agree. He just walks away.
Yeah.
But I think this movie had I think the most dynamic thing of this movie had characters that you didn't like. But yet the most likable one was the villain, Bob. Because the Bob seemed the one that was more grounded and the one that had all this basically hatred because of, what happened to his wife. She had Parkinson. She enlisted I think, what was it, 14 months after the program came out, she enlisted without him knowing he was up. I couldn't convince her because I never won an argument in marriage. So he's trying to still cope with it, but at the same time, his hatred for the Yorks, I think, elevated this movie a little bit more for me because of the fact that you have this guy who just hates privileged people and sees them didn't see climate change as a problem, saw privileged people as a problem in our society, and thought the best thing for this world is for all the privileged people to die so we can actually have a good world to live in. So for me, I'm going to give this a 4. I would go higher. I'm not going to go any lower because I enjoyed the movie to the point where I don't want to nitpick on anything. I think this is one of those rare movies where I have fun with it. I enjoyed it. I didn't know what to expect. It surprised me. It had a little comedy in it. The comedy was very on point when needed, so it wasn't like a whole thing. You had the Jared character, who everybody knows is a comedian, and his character was a pure freaking asshole.
All of these siblings had to live up to Charles. Charles was, and most news people, you have some that people hate, and you have the ones that are respected. And everyone respected Charles, even though he lived this privileged life, but he was still hard on his kids, which is what any parent does. He wants his kids to be successful without riding on his coattails. So all the kids trying to become something, be somebody to make dad proud. And, Jared becomes a conspiracy theorist. Rachel releases medications that kills people, and even though she knew it. Noah, I think just because having to deal with these 3 siblings, which were all blood, and he's not, was probably hard on him. So he turns to drugs, get in a car accident. And then you have the youngest one, and the youngest ones are almost always the ones that have the harder time in big families because the other ones become successful and then they keep trying and then they can't get there.
A lot of pressure, yeah.
A lot of pressure on all of them had a lot of pressure. So, and actually, Rick was the one that we talked about this movie a while ago because you told me you had come across the movie. And when you said Cronenberg, I'm like, dude, I looked it up. I'm like, that's David Cronenberg's daughter. So he had seen it. And I had said to him, I'm like, all right. And funny enough, I'm like, let me know if it's body horror so I can tell JR, let's do this.
Oh, God,
one.
I completely forgot about this conversation. Now
and
I remember.
Rick messaged me, it's not body horror. So I said, all right, forget it then. And then JR brings it up. I'm like, all right, well.
That's right.
And when JR mentions it, I'm like, all right, well, they both mentioned that. Yeah, let's go ahead and do this one. So, yeah, no. And the thing is, I mean, even though she didn't do the Cronenberg body horror, the scenes with the violence, getting a fork stuck in the neck, and the fact that Noah stuck it in a point where it didn't hit any important veins to kill her.
Arteries, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, how either you're a lucky bastard or you don't know your shit. No, this movie was highly entertaining. Like I said in the beginning, writers, stop coming up with these ideas because, first of all, if this were to happen, you're going to need us to watch your movies for you to make your money because the rich people are going to expect for you to just play it at their house and they're going to get it for free. So you can't off us. So score-wise, I'm going a 4 also on it.
I enjoyed the performances overall. I think everybody had a crucial part in the story. There wasn't too many characters overcrowding or people fighting for time as far as getting their character development in there. I think for me, it's an original and interesting concept, but ultimately, though, I think it was kind of, I don't want to say it was a bad execution, more like mediocre, but I don't want to say it was because it was bad filmmaking. I just think this movie, with the tone that it had such an original concept. I wanted it to be further explored, and I wanted to go even more darker. I like the happy ending. I hate happy endings, man. And for a movie like this, where yes, Ashley dies, but
the nicer
everyone,
one, by the way.
they all reunite at the end. They're all happy. You got Bob there. They're watching this guy. It's like, holy shit. Well, what happened to this environmental crisis? I want to know more about that. Like, fuck all this shit. I think this could have went in places where it would have even elevated the film even further for it. I'm a 3.5 because of that. It's on paper it's probably higher, but because there's so much potential that was left on the table, I think. And in my opinion, and it's not because he's a Cronenberg, because just because it's Cronenberg don't necessarily has to mean it's all blood splatter and shit. But I think this film, with the idea that it presented, could have been an even more important piece of like work to present out there, as far as giving us something different to dive into. Because yeah, you guys said it, it's very original. The concept is great, and I love this almost like a sci-fi quality to the film itself, And when I first saw the picture, you guys mentioned it was on Netflix, and you saw the guy in the hazmat suit almost on the doorway with the gun. I'm like, oh shit. And that shit was barely in the movie. It wasn't anything like that. It was more like in a sense, it felt like a political satire, because that's what it felt like to me. And I don't like stuff like that too much. Not that I'm not against it, but I didn't go in expecting that. I expected it. Oh shit, this is gonna be almost like a George Romero's The Crazies type of film. All right, And it's not that. It played it more for laughs as far as the docs, But Bob was great. But yeah. A 3.5. I think it could have been even. I could have been even better, in my opinion, if it just stuck to its guns and just not try to go soft at the end. If it would have been, it reminded me kind of like You're Next, when the siblings were fighting each other, like that whole the fight sequences and stuff. And I loved all that. But again, at the end, I was like, oh man, I just wish the stakes were a little higher and things meant more. But other than that, though, like you guys mentioned, very entertaining. Pretty original. I would say check it out. Go in with an open mind. It's, because there's a lot of nuances here, a lot of subtleties, and I think that is the film's greatest strength, in my opinion. So, guys, anything else you want to add to this conversation?
Just to throw a little salt at the end of that, the reason they're sitting there all happy, because remember, they're all millionaires now.
Yeah.
They got dad's estate.
Yep.
Money,
and they're immune, because by him, they
that's right. That's right.
Yeah,
they're exempt
now they're exempt. Sure. If there's a draft, they're safe.
And I love the parallels between like this enlisting and enlisting for like a war. Yeah, like they even mentioned that, like, oh no, but they're not gonna, they won't enlist us, right? They kept saying like, well, technically. All right, guys. Well, that's gonna do it for this episode of 3/4 of Horror. Join us next week. With that being said, stay good, stay healthy, stay sane, but most of all, don't enlist and stay scared.